American sports teams can be money-making machines. It depends on the team and, of course, on the league that they play in, but many teams are absolute cash cows for their majority stakeholders. Some teams choose to make dramatic cuts to their payroll and rely on guaranteed income from other teams and their leagues to make lots of money, while others rely on winning and the size of their market to generate lots of income. However these stakeholders choose to construct and run their teams, a very high percentage of them make absolute bank, and it's thanks in large part to the live television deals that have been doled out recently. Media rights are becoming a huge factor in how teams make money. They are the single biggest contributor to the team's revenue, constituting roughly 30 to 40% of a team's total revenue generated. So much money comes back to how sports are watched outside of the stadium, which is why teams were so eager to return and play games over the summer. It meant that they could recoup some of the money lost during this pandemic. And even if teams lose money from small gate receipts and virtually no ticket sales, still getting 35 to 40% of your revenue back is still better than nothing. Now before we move on, let's define what media rights actually means. Media rights are the rights each team or franchise holds to broadcast their games on TV, online streaming services, and so on. Media rights and TV rights for the sake of this video are basically interchangeable. The NBA, NHL, and MLB all have local media rights and national media rights, which are two different things. If you're watching a game on NBC Sports Philadelphia or NBC Sports Bay Area as a couple of examples, it's because the team that you're watching or you want to watch has sold the right to televise that game to NBC. In the NBA, the NHL, and the MLB, teams are free to hold their own local media rights. They can sell roughly 95% of their games to a local television provider or cable network, such as Fox Sports, NBC, and so on. These big cable networks then set up regional sports networks that are designed to serve certain regions of the country only, such as the greater Philadelphia area. If you wanted to watch the Philadelphia Phillies play on almost any given day, chances are you'd have to flip to NBC Sports Philadelphia's coverage of the game, because no other place is allowed to televise that game. This is an example of what teams call exclusive local media rights. With limited exceptions, teams usually designate one channel or cable network as the exclusive provider of their content. Nearly all 30 MLB teams follow this exact same model. However, if the Phillies were to ever make the playoffs or play in a primetime game, you would need to watch them play on Fox, ESPN, or TBS. These big games are an example of the MLB selling its national television rights. MLB negotiates on behalf of their 30 franchises with these massive cable networks to air a certain number of games each year from each team, which brings in even more money on top of what they already get for the league and its teams. Today, we're going to learn why these media rights are so big, how teams structure their payrolls around media rights, and how it affects teams in different cities, both large and small. Media rights are so huge for cable networks because live sports are a money-making machine for them. Think about the highest viewed events on television these days. How many of them are football games? Here's the top 10 list of the most watched television programs of all time. There is a whole lot of live sports on that list. Even outside of the Super Bowl broadcast, the last 10 years have been dominated in ratings by Sunday Night Football, the NBA Finals, and the World Series. Live sports are always going to draw a lot of attention and a lot of eyeballs. We explored some of the reasons for why people are always willing to watch these sports in the first video on this channel. A whole lot of attention and viewership means that these TV programs become a goldmine for advertisers. What better time to advertise your product than when everyone is watching one program? The cost of a 30-second ad on Sunday Night Football in the year 2020 is By airing these games and selling commercial time to advertisers, NBC and Sunday Night Football are making money hand over fist from their advertisement revenue. So having the ability to air live sports like football and the NFL are of great importance to cable networks, and as such, these cable networks are willing to pay more and more money these days to continue to have the rights to air these products. Because there is such great demand for these live sports, cable networks are willing to pay a premium for these media rights. These sports, which are nearly always in high demand, are such money makers that these cable networks are willing to shell out big bucks and extend these contracts for unusually long terms. MLB just extended its media deal with Fox through 2028, which guarantees revenue coming into the league through 2028, 8 more years. Imagine your employer just handed you a contract that guarantees you both a raise and work for 8 more years. Pretty sweet, right? And MLB doesn't just air games on Fox. They also have deals with Turner and Disney/ESPN that bring in even more money. Now, as leagues, teams, and cable networks recognize the power and the money that these media rights bring in, the negotiations between these 3 entities have escalated dramatically, and the stakes are now much, much higher, with the media rights deals becoming critical to each team's financial health. NFL media revenue has exploded since the 1960s, which is when TV contracts were first being tracked. In the 1960s, the NFL's annual revenue from the sale of media rights was just $300,000 total. Today, the NFL's annual revenue from the same sale of those media rights is now in the billions of dollars per year. And in that same period of time, the NFL increased the percentage of money generated from its TV deals from very little to just over 50% of their total revenue generated. Now, with this massive increase to their revenue streams, teams have started to adjust their payrolls and their finances accordingly. For the Green Bay Packers, who are one of the few teams with publicly available finance data, we can see that nearly 40% of all of their revenue comes from media deals. Now, why is it such a big deal that TV money is so big? What does it matter how much of a team's payroll is centered around one source of money? If I'm the majority stakeholder of a team and my team has a massive media contract, I know that I can rely on that contract to pay me big bucks, even if attendance is down, if merchandise sales are down, and so on. TV revenue is a constant, year in and year out, as long as games are played, for every major sport franchise in the United States. As TV deals increase, each team may choose to use these financial windfalls and financial benefits to spend money on player acquisitions or on other aspects of the club, or even just to pad the bottom line. When the Los Angeles Angels signed a massive new TV contract with Fox Sports in the early 2010s, they used that new financial windfall to attract popular free agents such as Albert Pujols, C.J. Wilson, and Josh Hamilton. Now, the Angels aren't the only ones who do this or who have done this in the past. As teams start to sign these new television deals that lock them into financial security for the foreseeable future, they could choose to aggressively pursue expensive free agents or even use that extra money to pursue and sustain a larger overall payroll. Teams may also choose to construct their team purely around the TV revenue that comes each year. It's not just an extra revenue source, it is the main and one of the only revenue sources for these teams. 2 prominent examples of this include the Miami Marlins and the Tampa Bay Rays. They each make relatively little in their TV deals each year, but in a normal year, the Rays' TV money alone could cover over half of all of this team's expenses. The Marlins also took extreme measures to slash their payroll and are in a similar financial position to their South Florida neighbors, the Rays, where the ticket sales and merchandise sales are essentially just a little bit of extra profit for the majority stakeholder of each team. Now, whether teams choose to spend a whole lot of money or virtually nothing on their payroll, the media rights have a significant impact on how each team is constructed and how they're able to turn profits. Now, let's address how these media rights affect teams in different sized cities. The differences in media rights money are especially important in MLB because the teams rely even more heavily on their local revenue sources than in other sports. Local media revenue is everything to these teams. It makes up such a significant portion of the team's revenue that much of the team's focus is on the local community. There is a distinct advantage to having a team in a large metropolitan area, such as Boston, New York City, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, and so on. Quick maths would tell you that large cities have more people with cable television. More people with cable television means more viewers, which in turn means more demand for the live sport product, which in turn means that the media rights for those sport products become even more valuable. Remember, more people watching makes more money for cable networks, for the leagues, and for companies. So the Angels, the Dodgers, the Red Sox, the Yankees, and so on have a distinct competitive advantage because they can spend more money to acquire better players and build better teams if they're smart with this extra TV money and all this extra money that comes with being a big market team. Teams in smaller metropolitan areas like Oakland have to mine every small advantage that they can so that they can field a competitive team against the big market players. So these teams tend to focus on accumulating as much young, cost-controlled talent as they can to compete for more than just a year or two at a time, whereas the bigger market teams don't necessarily have to worry about that. If there is one thing to take away from this video, it's that media rights are one of, if not the most important things a team can focus on, because it serves as a way for teams to grow their profit margins, use it to build their brand awareness and image, or use the extra money to build the best possible team that they can. Media rights are also about to change dramatically, with the presence of tech companies like Twitter, Amazon, Netflix, and Facebook changing the way that we view these live sporting events. They also happen to be in the bidding war for these rights to air popular games like Thursday and Monday Night Football, which further complicates the media rights landscape in the future. This is also complemented by the decline in cable network viewership, or cord cutters, but however these rights are sold, there is no question in my mind that these media rights will continue to be immensely valuable to teams, leagues, and cable networks airing professional sports. I hope you enjoyed this video on media rights and why they're so critical to each team's bottom line. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment about what you want to see next on this channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Highly Technical Sports.